How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another Marvel Snap Zone video. We have the ranked meta tier list for the week. October 3rd is when I'm filming this, early in the morning. But we have the tier list. It's for the last week of the last season. Right now, Elsa has come out. I think Elsa is going to shake up this meta more than some of the recent cards. I guess Loki shook it up quite a bit as well, but I think Elsa is going to change some things. Silver Surfer, in my opinion, is very strong right now. I'm actually going to have a video on a Silver Surfer deck that I've been doing insane with over on my channel. It's going to go up probably about the same time as this one, maybe a little bit later. So go check out my channel. But as far as this tier list is concerned, not much exciting things going on. We went over it last week. The meta is just kind of settling, not any really high impact cards coming out. There was an OTA. The main change was Galactus in that OTA. So some movement, but nothing too crazy, nothing that we haven't seen before. And so this kind of just feels like the calm before the storm of the new season when everything gets shaken up. Really quick, the silent performers, we have Hella Tribunal kind of making it back on the list, just kind of scraping in there. We have good card stature. We've seen this deck before. And then Phoenix Force. Phoenix Force, I think, is the new deck this week that everyone's been talking about. That's been doing pretty well. A lot of creators have been talking about it. I would definitely, if you're interested in playing Phoenix Force, now is probably a decent time to do it. I don't know with Elsa coming out if there's going to be any, crazy shifts where Phoenix Force isn't good anymore, but probably okay to try right now. But we are here to go over the tier 1 and tier 2 decks. This is going to be another quick video because there's just really not much going on. There was the OTAs. Again, mostly what the OTAs affected was Galactus with a nerf to Galactus. There was a nerf to Kitty, but not a lot of Kitty decks in the meta, at least at the top of the meta recently. I think that's going to change again with Elsa coming out. The buff to Psylocke had Thanos Control come back. We'll look at that very briefly. We're going to look at all these very briefly. If you want more detailed breakdowns, go watch like last week's, probably not last week's, even 2 weeks ago's video. These are just the same decks that we've been seeing. Squirrel Girl got changed. She's a little bit buff. I think that's a good prep for Elsa. And then Snow Guard was changed. And that's about it. So aside from Galactus and Kitty, not like super crazy shifts in the meta. But leading the pack, we have Iron Patriot at tier 1. That was in tier 1 last week as well. We have Move Alioth. Move Doomwave was in it last week. It's basically the same list. Shuri Sauron was tier 2 last week, so back up from tier 1. Evolve Doomwave, also tier 1. Discard Dracula was leading tier 2 last week. Loki Collector, also in tier 2 last week. Thanos Control is new back on this list, but we've seen it before. But with the buff to Psylocke and then Alioth doing well, Thanos Control is kind of back. I don't think it's that great. It's not as good as it used to be, just because of priority issues. We're trying to play Alioth, but we'll talk about it when we get over there. Alioth ramp, that is just a normal ramp list. I think that was tier 1 last week, so it's down to tier 2. And then in tier 3 we have Cerebro 5, Deadpool Destroy, and Junk. Junk is new on the list this week as well. And then of course, if you guys don't have all the cards and you want some like budget lists to try out, Dan includes some budget lists. They're pretty good, so make sure you check them out. But let's go through the list really quick. Again, I'm not going to go over too much on gameplay or anything like that. Iron Patriot, no surprise here. Very solid list. It's worth noting, I think that Silver Surfer is going to be one of the better Elsa lists. It's what I've been playing. It puts an insane amount of power on board on turn 6. It's very reminiscent of the old Silver Surfer, not quite as powerful. It lifted the ceiling of the Silver Surfer deck slightly, but it picked up the floor quite a bit. A lot of games with Silver Surfer before, if you didn't have Sarah, if you're playing the Sarah version, your turn 5 seemed a little weird. You're just playing 1/3 drop. If you didn't have Forge and a Brood, you really don't have much options, and Elsa just really fills in an extra slot, that extra safety net, that in case you don't have Brood or Forge into Brood, you have Elsa into whatever you need, and you're going to fill up a lot of lanes very quickly with that deck. So I do think Silver Surfer as a whole is just going to be very good. We're going to see next week when Den puts together that article. But Iron Patriot, we've seen it before. Alioth again in the top decks. Not much to say here. Just solid decks all around. Move Alioth. This was Move Doomwave last week. I think the lists are almost exactly the same. So the only difference is instead of America Chavez that was in the list last week, you are playing Mobius in this week for Move Alioth. It's the move package with the like Doomwave package up top. I mean, Wave Doom is just very strong as a whole. It's just a good combo. Wave shuts down a lot of cards. I've gone over this again in the past. Wave shuts down a lot of different decks that are trying to dump a lot of power on board. I think Doom Wave is going to stay up there in tier 1 with Elsa getting added. I think a lot of decks with Elsa are going to look to dump a lot of cards on turn 6, and just countering that with Wave is going to be pretty good. Next up, he actually has a basic move version on here as well. But next up is Shuri Sauron. Again, nothing changed here. This version has Alioth. Does last week's version have Alioth in there? I don't think so. I think it was just added in. Yeah, no Alioth in last week's version. It was running Enchantress instead. It seems that Enchantress has gotten swapped out for Alioth, which is just a fantastic card. Enchantress was put in this deck to shut off your ongoings because they're negative ongoings, but also against some of the other decks in the meta, Enchantress could be used as an offensive ability, as a reactive ability. And I don't think Enchantress is that impactful now in the current meta. So when you remove that portion of her utility, subbing in something a little bit better is just the correct move. And in this case, Alioth, because Alioth is insane, and I still don't understand why that card is here. It's just very old leader-esque, and I'm not a fan. Next up, we have Evolve Doomwave. Evolve Doomwave. This one has Mobius in there. Let's look at last week's list. I guess we're just going to kind of compare lists from this week to last week and see what has changed and what hasn't. Last week's list had Cosmo in there. This one has Mobius thrown in there. I guess it's been performing a little bit better. And then instead of America Chavez, this is running Iron Lad. This also has Alioth thrown in there. Last week's list did not have Alioth thrown in there. Apparently Alioth is unbelievably strong and is getting thrown into most decks. I haven't played much Evolved Doomwave. My favorite list in the last week has been Ramp. But obviously, Doom and Wave, fantastic combo. It's really at the top of the meta at the moment. Next up, Discard Dracula. Just a solid list. It's been here for multiple weeks. It does what it's trying to do. Dakin really contributed to this deck quite a bit. And again, just solid. We've seen it before. I've talked about it before. I'm not going to keep talking about it. Loki Collector is down to tier 2. I think it was actually tier 2 last week as well. I don't think Loki Collector belongs in tier 2. I think it is a tier 1 deck. I think it's arguably the best deck in the game at the moment. But I think it requires a high skill ceiling to pilot correctly. And I think at high levels of play, those players have the ability to do that well. So the win rate at high levels of play, I think, is just higher. Player to player, with the amount that's getting played, the popularity of it at high levels, I think the win rate comes down a little bit because it's constantly playing itself. And when it's doing that, the win rate is naturally going to go down to 50%. But I think when you factor in the general population of Marvel Snap players trying to pilot this deck, me included, I don't think I'm very good at piloting this deck. I think that brings the win percentage down, the cube rate down. But I think Loki Collector as an archetype, maybe not this specific deck list, Loki Collector as an archetype, I think is just one of the best decks in the game at the moment. We have some tools like Mobius to deal with it, but I still think it's just one of the best decks in the game. Also worth noting, depending on how the meta shifts after Elsa comes out, if there's less waves in the meta, I think there's probably going to be more waves in the meta, but if there's less and then less Mobiuses, Loki Collector can shoot back up there for your average player. But for now, it is in tier 2. Next up, Thanos Control, back on the list. The buff to Psylocke in the OTA, I think contributes to this quite a bit. I think Thanos Control has always been a relatively strong deck but I think just popularity died down. And with the buff to Psylocke, I think people wanted to give it a shot again. And because it's just a solid deck, it's just performing okay, and people are actually playing it, so it has made the list. I've never stopped playing Thanos Control. I've been playing like a Thanos Destroy Control, more for fun, less for like really competitive climbing, but I think it does land in this, you know, tier 3, tier 2 range, and so you can't go wrong, and you're going to be able to climb with it. So yeah, buff to Psylocke, Alioth slots in perfectly into this deck. The only problem with this deck is that early game, you're going to have priority. Around mid game, you generally lose priority, and you're trying to steal one lane with Professor X. So by turn 6, you don't necessarily have priority for Alioth to get the most value and for sure destroy things and cancel your opponent's turn. So if they have their own Alioth, then you're kind of in trouble. So I think that's kind of why it's sitting around tier 2 right now. But it is a strong list, and Thanos Control is also it's just fun. It's just a fun list. Being able to play Time Stone or Psylocke on turn 3 and then Professor X on turn 4 and just like guessing correctly and stealing a lane is just so much fun. So give Thanos Control a shot. It's doing very well. Next up, Alioth Ramp. Like I said earlier, the nerf to Galactus really affected this deck. I was playing, this was the deck that I was playing. I was having a lot of fun with it. I was having fun playing Galactus again. Alioth really, as much as I hate the card, it's unbelievably fun to get Galactus out and then Alioth and just destroy everything. So strong deck. I think it's doing significantly worse, or it is significantly worse because of the Galactus nerf. I believe these meta tier lists have like the first half of last week included. So I think some of the stats from this are the first half of last week. So I don't know where this is going to land. I'm curious where it'll land by next week. I don't even think it's going to be on the list. I think one, popularity I think is going to drop, and two, one of the win conditions, just the Galactus playline is just not as effective, and the difference between 5 and 7 power is pretty significant. So and then next up is tier 3. We have Cerebro 5, Deadpool Destroy, and then Junk, which is new. People have been playing a lot of Junk decks. I don't know if Junk is going to be good with Elsa coming out. I know you're clogging up lanes, but you really have to clog up that last slot. And if they're constantly dropping something like Kitty in there, I don't know how effective that's going to be. So yeah, I mean, that's a tier list. There's not a whole lot of exciting stuff happening these last couple weeks. I hope you still got something out of this video. I'm really trying to not make these videos repetitive where I'm saying the same thing every week. So I'm trying to add in a little bit extra, but when the meta is this stale, I just don't have much to add. And I want to go over the tier list with you guys, but at a certain point, there's only so much I can say about these decks. So I'm hoping Elsa shakes up the meta. So far, I've been having a lot of fun with Silver Surfer. Again, check out my channel. I'll post a video today on a Silver Surfer deck that I've just been having a lot of fun with. It's kind of crazy the amount of power you can put out. And that's it. I do a ranked meta tier list and a conquest tier list on Marvel Snap Zone every week. So if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing to here and my channel. And as usual, if you love all things Marvel Snap, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell. I'll see you in the next one.